Hello and welcome back to Simple Money Podcast, Canada's own personal finance podcast presented in short and informative episodes. I'm your host, Matthew Seawick, also known as the Friendly Financial Coach. So before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to share two pieces of really exciting news. The first is that we just hit over 100,000 total downloads. This is absolutely incredible, and I truly feel grateful to be part of every listener's personal finance journey. So from the deepest part of my heart, thank you so much for making this a success. The other bit of really exciting news is that we now have a Patreon account to help support the creation of this podcast. For those not familiar with Patreon, it's a platform that helps fund creators and their content. Listeners can pledge small monetary amounts, and with those contributions can also lead to some extra perks. In our case, I'm offering to personally help contributors answer their personal finance questions and to offer personalized guidance. Putting every episode together for this show is really a labor of love, and this will definitely help support that vision. If you're interested to find out more, the Patreon account can be found in the blog post and also in the show notes. So that's it for all the good news today, but thanks again for listening. So on today's episode, we're going to talk about what I think is probably one of the most important and interesting economic concepts out there. It's called externalities, and once we understand how this concept works, it can really help change our perspective on the world around us. Essentially, externalities attempt to explain how impacts caused by others affect us and the environment around us. The framework then offers solutions on what we can do about them. The concept about externalities is pretty easy to understand. The formal and boring definition is that economic transactions can have either positive or negative effects on third parties that are not accounted for in the price and transaction. Now, translating these terms, economic transactions most commonly include the production or consumption of services or goods, and also includes investment choices. The third party part refers to someone that is not part of the economic transaction but is still impacted. And this can include individuals, businesses, the environment around us, and more. These impacts can be negative if they cause harm, or positive if they make a beneficial impact. A key concept of this theory is that the externalities are excluded from the price that is paid by the economic agent causing the effect. So in other words, the costs paid by them do not reflect the true costs of the decision. So for example, if there's a negative externality, as in that it harms the third party, the economic agent causing the impact is not paying the full price, and those affected by the externality are paying the remainder. On the other hand, if there's a positive externality, it's the reverse, and the agent is actually overpaying. Externalities are often considered by economists to be market failures, which is to say that there is a fundamental fault in the specific market, and that some type of intervention is required to adjust the price for what it really is. So to give you an example, think of a factory that is constantly spewing out thick black pollution. This pollution is then breathed in by everyone around the factory, leading to health complications, lower property values, and more. To make things even worse, the pollution enters the water systems and damages ecosystems. This then further affects farmers, fishers, and other people that rely on the environment for their income. Now in this situation, the producer is paying just to make and maintain their business, but they're not paying for the environmental, health, and other damages that they're causing. So they're not really paying the true cost of their business, and this is at the expense of everyone around them and the environment. Now in the age of global warming, this example is very real, and understanding this theory can help us understand how these situations are looked at by economists. This perspective then leads to certain types of solutions, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes. And another very real example of externalities right now is about wearing masks to prevent COVID-19. This is obviously a very heavily debated issue, but the majority of medical professionals currently state that masks can reduce the spread of COVID-19, and some other research has shown that large-scale usage of masks can reduce deaths and economic losses. Under this belief, wearing a mask creates a positive externality, while not wearing a mask can have a negative impact. This positive externality is then weighed against the negative impact of having to wear masks and the perceived reduction of one's personal liberty. What we see is that those that support wearing masks view the net outcome of the equation to be positive, while those that refuse to wear masks view the outcome as negative. They may not consciously view the decision under this framework, but their underlying beliefs cause them to value one choice over the other. Obviously, this argument is not as simple as this, but the usage of the externality framework can really help offer a unique perspective on the issue. Now, the externality model not only gives us a framework to understand these issues, it also offers solutions. At the heart of the model, there's a price mismatch, and this is what most solutions attempt to correct. So if there's a negative externality, then increasing the cost to include the externality will reflect the true costs, and a reduction in costs can be used if there's a positive externality. The idea is that these changes properly adjust the amount that's paid and can act as an incentive to either dissuade or promote a specific activity. In some cases, other legislation or nudges can be used to cause a change. So continuing the example about pollution, a carbon tax is often touted by economists as the preferred solution. What happens here is that there's a price assigned to the negative externality caused by the pollution, which then needs to be paid by the one that's causing the pollution, either typically a producer or even a consumer. And if the cost is large enough, this will affect the agent's decision and help create demand for other solutions. So for example, if a motorist is confronted with increased fuel prices because of a carbon tax, they may decide to buy a more fuel-efficient vehicle instead of the gas guzzler that they had before. So the idea is that when there's a price change due to an externality, these are really meant to put the cost of the choice to what they really are and fix some type of market failure or deficiency. In some cases, governments may also use behavioral economic theory like nudges to promote specific activities. These come in many different forms, but they're essentially cues that can help push a person to make a specific choice that is viewed as creating a positive outcome. A famous example of this is causing people to opt out of retirement plans instead of opting in. This has shown in studies that there's a large uptick in usage of these plans and reduces the concerns from having underfunded retirements. Overall, externalities are super interesting and can be applied to our everyday life. Even your personal finance journey can have positive externalities. If you share the information that you gained with people around you, then you make a positive impact and you add value in their lives. So that's it for today. Thanks again for joining us. As always, if you're enjoying the show, please consider sharing with anyone around you, create that positive externality, and also leave a rating on whichever podcast provider you use. These are, of course, very helpful for us here. And if you have any questions, you can send me an email at info@ffcoach.ca. That's it for now. Talk to you soon.